Scotland have become maybe the most interesting team in the Women's Six Nations over the last couple of years. I think they've kind of taken the place of Wales for a brief period when the teams were first professionalising, where Wales were the team everyone looked at and went like, oh, cool, they're interesting, they're exciting, they're going somewhere. Scotland have slowly but surely, I think year on year, got better and better and climbed further and higher up that ranking.
Yeah.
You know, not necessarily the table, but the ranking of how much do you, as a neutral fan, want to sit down and go, yeah, I want to watch this lot.
Yeah, I think they're the most ambitious team
Yeah.
that comes across to me, which I know is a weird thing to say after Ireland literally beat the Black Ferns in WXV1. But whenever you see anything like interviews with the players or just the way they talk to each other or about each other or the coaches or anything, you just get good vibes off them.
Yeah.
That they genuinely believe they can go such a long way. And for a long time, they've loved being plucky underdogs. And whenever you hear Rachel Malcolm talk, you just get the impression she believes that they are beyond that now. And that's the same with any of the players. And I think beyond the last World Cup, there was a lot of questions about Brian Eason and going, has he taken them as far as he physically can? And he's so overwhelmingly proven the answer to that question is no, that he's taken them another step further.
So Rachel Malcolm, I think it's an uncontroversial opinion. Many people hold it that she's probably the best captain possibly in World Rugby beyond Sia Khaleesi. You know, I think she's probably second on that slot of best captains of any nation, male or female. She's so good at dealing with referees, so good at inspiring the players. She's just so articulate and intelligent and smart and just able to, get a point across incredibly well as being a brilliant player.
Yeah.
So she's phenomenal. But as you mentioned, Brian Eason, that's the interesting point here, right? That he got the job, I think, quite unheralded. He'd been an assistant floating around in the Scottish coaching system for quite a long time and was the sort of appointment teams used to make for their women's teams, right? That it was much less the global, very public search and more of an internal appointment they'd make.
Yeah.
And Brian Eason was someone really trusted within the Scottish Rugby Union. And then he was bumped up to their, at the time, second biggest job, given that opportunity. And at first, you say there was a question mark about whether he was the guy for this, but he's undoubtedly proven that. And I think the really interesting thing over this little run of the Eason period is generally when you're looking to do analysis and you're looking to break down teams and how they play, you look for, if a team drastically improves over the course of a coach's tenure, what have they changed? What has this coach done that has changed how they played 5 years ago when he first came in, or 4 years ago, to right now, okay? And the interesting thing about when you look over the Brian Eason era is very little has changed. He came in with a clear game plan. Scotland have basically stuck to it and they've just got better at implementing it.
Yeah.
And there are tweaks and little changes to their system, but they're broadly playing the same way. Scotland have kicked, on average, 21 times, all but one campaigns under Brian Eason.
Wow.
Right? They have remained entirely consistent. They had one Six Nations where they're down to 19 average kicks per game, but every other Six Nations under him and the last two WXVs, they have kicked an average of 21 times per game.
So they're very clear on what their game plan is?
They are so clear on what they're doing. Their passing numbers go up and down a bit, their carries go up and down a bit, but broadly, their kick-pass run rate is very similar, and the number of times they kick the ball, which is a really interesting thing to tell you how a team is playing, identical. Yeah. They haven't changed their game plan over the last few years. There's few tweaks in shape and structure and defence, but absolutely nothing from a broader, this is how we play the game point of view.
Yeah, from an identity point of view.
Yeah.
Which is really interesting in itself because the Women's Six Nations has fluctuated in terms of how much teams kick generally, whereas they've stayed consistent.
They've generally been third or fourth.
Yeah,
the entire way through.
Yeah, I would imagine a lot of that also comes down to Helen Nelson as being the consistent 10 for the last few years, basically since the end of the Sarah Law era. Helen Nelson has been so consistent as that fly half.
This lawless era.
Indeed, very good. But she is the sort of 10 who doesn't like faffing around in her own half.
No.
But is very, very aware of where the space is on the field at all times, Often that is in the backfield, and if that is left there, then she will punish you. She, much like Finn Russell in the men's team, likes to find grass and get kind of dodgy bounces because the wingers that she has out wide are rapid.
Yeah.
And Scotland, the main sort of tweak that you were on about there earlier is the amount of, we'll use this phrase again, bullshit players that they are developing in that back line, you know? We've got...
And also that back row, I want to mention as well. Like, that back row is full of players.
I think we should come on to that later on, But you're looking at, like, Ronan Lloyd has been around a long time, you know? Unfortunately, Corrine Grant is out injured this Six Nations, who was exceptional last year, as is Merrill Smith, who was that dual playmaker role.
Those are, other than Emma Wassell, basically the only injuries Scotland have going into this tournament.
Yeah.
Which I think is, obviously you don't want anyone to be injured, but if you had to suffer 3 injuries, Wassell aside perhaps, they're in positions where Scotland have a lot of cover, and they have other players who are now fit and can fill that position exceptionally well, so you won't notice their absence.
Yeah. I think, as I say, the main one, in my opinion, is Merrill Smith, because, like, Corrine Grant, outstanding player, you can replace her with another bullshit winger, you know, because they've got Rona Lloyd, they've got Francesca McGee, like, they've got Chloe Raleigh will come in at full-back, you know. Like, in terms of the actual quality of players...
You've also got Scott and Walker, who've been playing brilliantly well for Edinburgh, who've come in, as obviously, you know, Scott's got 3 caps, but Walker's uncapped. Hannah Walker's been playing fantastically well for Edinburgh. Like,
she's
really good finisher.
Rapid.
Like, ironically named, because she always seems to be absolutely sprinting. Absolutely herring.
As you mentioned, Lucia Scott's been really, really good for Edinburgh. Play around the back line.
And she's someone who, she doesn't necessarily have the most pace in the world, but she's got a little burst of acceleration, and there's a brilliant try she scored against Brecon Thunder, where if you have a look, it like captures her, I think, as a fullback, and why I like her a lot as a fullback, in that her positioning is really solid, really sound, and then she is evasive without needing to be necessarily like top end pace in the way we see, you know, Fran McGee or Chloe Raleigh are able to like bring that pace in. I think Scotland have got a lot of options. They're developing a lot of players in their back three out of nowhere. You know, I think their options in the back three, they've got plenty that will be starting for other nations.
And again, if you just step into that fly half berth, again, cut from a similar cloth from Helen Nelson, in the way that she wants to really test defences and see how many times can we get the ball out the boot. You know, how many touches can we get the likes of Emma Orr in the centres, who is the bullshit player in this team. But as I say, like Merrill Smith being out injured is quite crucial, because Scotland elected to go with her over one of the bullshit players in Chloe Raleigh last year as a means of playing a bit wider. And I remember, as a Welsh fan, seeing that for the first game of the last year's Six Nations and going, oh great, they've benched Chloe Raleigh. That's a really good thing. And eating my words rapidly, because that dual playmaker system could not have worked better for them against Wales. You know, the amount of touches they managed to get these bullshit players out wide, I'm going to keep using that phrase because it is fundamentally what the Scotland team is built on in terms of how they like to attack, is players like that. But yeah, Rona Lloyd getting the ball loads, Corrine Grant getting the ball loads, you know, like, yeah, Fran McGee is a seriously dangerous player. He's absolutely rapid. As you say, Hannah Walker, if she gets an opportunity, she will score tries, you know, she will make breaks. Whereas they've not got Merrill Smith to step in and give those wide passes. And so, yeah, I'd imagine they're going to put a lot more on Lisa Thompson. Now, Lisa Thompson, for viewers who are unaware of her kind of game, again, if you're a fan of the Scotland men's team, it's interesting. There's a little bit of mirroring with Sione Tuipulotu. Probably a little bit closer to Tom Jordan, who thinks he's massive.
I think she was always like an almost one-for-one of Sam Johnson for me. They were extremely similar players, and they both came through around the same time. And obviously Lisa Thompson had much more longevity than Sam Johnson, who's now playing the Pro D2.
So she is a very direct carrier, like really, really good at getting over the gain line. Like, she's a big physical presence and she runs hard lines. I think that is her primary game, right? But she really tests herself to be a distributor, and that's what makes her such a great player to watch.
All-round game.
Yeah, really good kicker as well. And weirdly plays sevens. Has played sevens for the last few years, which you wouldn't think.
I don't think
look at how
it's
she
her
plays
natural
15s.
game.
No, I agree. But she has the skill set that she is good at it, you know. And so I wonder if Scotland will try and overuse much the same as their men's team do, ironically. That move of hit 12 first, get 10 to slip into the boot, get Emma Orr running those hard lines. And Emma Orr is the key to that, because she is so good on those hard lines. If you get a half tackle on it, it's not enough. You know, somebody will run off her, she always frees that arm. And yeah, if she's in space, she just scores tries for fun.
Great dummy run as well, Emma Orr, which I think often goes underappreciated.
She's exceptional.
I'd throw that in. The other thing about Scotland's attack, right, and if you go and look at them, they basically don't engage centres. They do a lot of playing down blind sides, a lot of looking up, scanning, and going, okay, they've just got a flanker and a winger on this blind side, we'll hit someone up there. And we often see the Scottish attack is much less structured than you expect from a team who are as open as them, right? And they will quite happily send one player on their own down a wing if they think they can make a dominant carry.
Yeah.
What they're often doing is just looking for the key defenders. So usually that's maybe a 7, but the 2 centres, and just trying to avoid them. So whether that's getting the ball right out wide or playing very close, they play very little in that kind of middle zone in between. They rarely crash up into 12, 13 channels. It's always into the forward channels or right out wide. And I think that has been enormously beneficial for them because they want to get, those bullshit players, those wingers, as you mentioned, or their back row, right? And their front row as well, who are such brilliant carriers. You know, Lana Skelton basically counts as a back rower. Belial, absolutely brilliant carrier. They've got so many of these around the park. But you look at the way that Jade Conkle over the last few years has become so much more dynamic, you know. I think she perhaps, you go back before her vegan diet, was one of the most powerful number 8s in the world. She has now become one of the hardest working in the world, that there are very, very few players, whether she's playing lock or 8, who carry as often as her, who get through as much work as her. She's absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, she's an unreal carrier, an offloader as well.
Yeah. And then you've got the likes of, you know, the Rachels, McLaughlin and Malcolm, who aren't necessarily the biggest and most physical 7s in the world, and yet pack a punch when they do carry.
They're so hard working.
They're so committed to every single carry.
Yeah, it's what they're that kind of player who just don't accept a tackle and will leg drive for absolutely everything. Evie Gallagher at number 8 from Bristol Bears, very much
phenomenal this season.
Very much the same. Yeah. For the last couple of seasons, frankly, and made it very difficult for Jade Conkle to get back in this team.
Made more turnovers than anyone else in the Six Nations last year.
Yeah, that back row, as you say, like the bullshit factor of them. Like Jade Conkle is one of those players where if you give her a 1v1 carry with somebody, she'll make a tackle bust. Evie Gallagher, much the same. Like every time you think she's making like a disposable carry, she makes 3-4 meters more than you think she has any right to. And obviously in the Six Nations, that really adds up.
Yeah.
And I think kind of the glue between the two things that we've just spoken about, right, is Katie Matheson at 9.
Yeah.
So she is the sort of player, you mentioned that they like running up blind sides, they like really keeping defences guessing there. Now, you would think on the basis of that they have a really like quick running 9, right? Katie Matheson's not necessarily that. She's all about structure and tempo, right? Her speed off the ball in terms of how quick she gets the breakdown and fizzes the ball out is through the roof. Like, she's so good at taking the right decisions and just sticking to the Scottish game plan, you know? They also have in the squad Leah Brebner-Holden, who is young, only has 5 caps, has been playing very well in the Celtic Challenge, right? And is one of those sorts of players who will happily come on and change what the opposition defence is expecting, you know? And I think that axis could work so, so well.
I want to pull up another player who I think is going to be on the bench as well, in Meg Varley.
Yes.
Who is quite a big get for them. Was in the squad last year, then got a horrendous injury, I think a few days, from 3 or 4 days after the squad was named. So is yet to win a cap, yet has been brilliant for Bristol for a few seasons now.
Yeah.
Has been
nicknamed Megabus down at Bristol. Yeah.
Which is strong nickname. She is a fantastic player.
Yeah.
Right. She has pretty much a very complete skill set, as shown by the fact that she can play anywhere.
Yeah.
She's mostly been playing 12 for Bristol this season, particularly since Alona Marr came in and was sticking on the wing. However, she's capable of playing on the wing. She can play fullback as well, and she has played a bit of 13 this season for Bristol as well.
Yeah.
I think she's now being very much viewed as a 12. I think she's been a fullback in past, but I think she is absolutely perfect for this Scotland team, number 23. Yeah. And obviously no one wants to be that. Everyone wants to be the starter. But she is so perfect for the way this Scotland team play that she can come on and replace any of those individuals we've mentioned, whether it is Lisa Thompson, Emma, or any of that back three.
It mitigates that Meryl Smith injury a little bit, doesn't it?
It does. And she can fill into their position perfectly, but she also brings something slightly different.
Yeah.
In that she's incredibly elusive, but she's also, like, she brings a bosh about her. You know, she's incredibly powerful once she reaches the tackle line without necessarily being, you know, the biggest centre in the world. And I think she just allows them to change any position they want and change the dynamic of that within the back line.
Yeah.
She is the sort of player, when teams talk about going 6-2 or 7-1, she's the kind of player you want, because the impact she can bring, I think, is equivalent to bringing on a different back rower who can be much more physical.
Yeah.
I think she can fundamentally change the way you're playing in one position in that back line. And I think she's such an interesting weapon for Scotland to have on that bench.
Yeah, and I think she might be one of those players who actually comes into the forwards a little bit, not positionally,
Yeah.
but in terms of like running tip-on lines, because you watch her and Phoebe Murray playing together at Bristol, that is where she really thrives, is when she got somebody to run off, somebody to hit hard lines off. And yeah, once again, she can free an arm, she can get an offload in. And it's not just that, it's like, she's obviously played off the likes of Amber Reid and Holly Aitchison at Bristol for the last couple of years. And she is used to having her team keeping the ball for as long as they can, getting loads of touches, and again, just reloading really quickly and setting something off either side. Like, as you say, she can step in as a 10, she can play as a fullback, she can go on the wing. It's just, as you say, in second halves of games, she will get arm tackles on her, you know? And that is where she thrives.
Yeah. I wonder whether we might see her coming on a fullback.
Yeah.
And just giving her a bit of a chance to, against this Welsh team, who I think in pass have tired late on, and on kick chase, that shows more in women's rugby than perhaps any other area, is you get more lazy kick chases in late stages of the games, right? So you get a lot of disproportionate amount of counter-attack tries compared to men's rugby. And I think that might be an interesting option to have, is someone who can come on that's incredibly physical and can run the ball back with some bosh and break some tackles and at least give you gain line, if not create try-scoring opportunities.
Everyone's alert when Chloe Rowley has the ball in the backfield.
Yeah.
Like, everyone knows that she's going to score off counter-attack, she's going to make breaks.
But I think she's just like, she's an absolutely fascinating option. I would have her in that 23 jersey no matter what, which again, I'm sure she wouldn't be delighted by. I'm sure she wants to be starting, but just as a weapon to be using, just absolutely vital. However, I do want to move on. One thing we did want to do is with each team, pull out each one player who we think can make a difference. Let's say if this team's to go on and win the championship or finish second to England, who is it that you think will make the difference, that will kick them onto that next gear?
So during the time we've been recording this, I'm going to change who I was going to say.
Okay.
Yeah, controversial. I'm going to go with Emma Orr.
Okay.
Again, like, she is the bullshit player. And we've talked a lot about that concept a lot in the men's Six Nations here. But I think in the women's Six Nations for a few years now, that has almost been the most fundamental factor. Other than, like, I know England have a lot of them, right? But it is the fact that they are, across the board, the most structured and the most fluid team is what's generally gotten them to where they are. But for everybody else, it kind of is, who can best utilise their bullshit players?
You look at Australia, best example of it, right? Their team is stuffed with bullshit players, and you regularly see them come up against teams like Scotland in WXV, like Wales in past years, where they should be losing this game because they're less organised, they look off the pace, their scrum isn't holding up as well, whatever it is, their line out, they're losing most of their ball, and yet they have so many bullshit players that are winning these games.
Emma Orr is a cheat code. Right? She feels unfair at times when she's into space. She can hit lines off 10 beautifully. And again, once she's through gaps, her offloading game, her distribution, and just her feet, you know, the way that she dances around defenders, she's absolutely outstanding. And I think she's one of those players that her teammates have always spoken very highly of, but when you watched her in WXV the last couple of years, and last year's Six Nations, she looked at times unplayable.
Yeah. I want to pick up a forward, counter that woke nonsense of picking it back. Alex Stewart, probably the breakthrough player of last year, was absolutely phenomenal in the Six Nations last year. Finished as the top tackler, finished, I think, second for most rucks hit and second for most clean outs made. To Alex Callender, you know, who has been unbelievable. Oh no, clean outs she was second to Zoe Allcroft. Tackle she was level with Alex Callender. Her stats are ridiculous.
That doesn't even account for turnovers as well.
That doesn't account for
ludicrous at.
She's brilliant over the ball. She's brilliant at also presenting turnover tackles. She's a brilliant kind of weapon for giving the likes of Rachel Malcolm and McLaughlin and Evie Gallagher, who was the top turnover merchant. How many of those came from Alex Stewart making the tackle beforehand and rolling the ball into their path? The most ridiculous part of that is she was 19.
Yeah.
She turned 20, she'll be 21 just after the Six Nations finishes.
Yeah. And already at Edinburgh, she's been promoted into their leadership group.
She is the captain now.
Yeah,
she was given the captaincy.
Yeah, she's been captaining them in the Celtic Challenge and has done such a good job.
Yeah.
It's uber physical.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I, as a Welsh fan, always go like, yeah, well, we've got Alex Callender. She is the Scottish Alex Callender. Yeah. Like, the way that she has such an engine, is so fit. Like, one of those players that 70 minutes into a game, she's still that impactful. You're like, how are you not knackered yet? You've done everything.
I think
she's ridiculous.
Axel Matthews. They've all got an Alex. Every team's got an outstanding Alex. What's that all about? Matthews, Callender, Stewart, Ireland,
All
get on
Rose.
this. What are you doing? For me, Alex Stewart is maybe 18 months, 2 years off being one of the best players in the world.
I can
She's
definitely see it.
already right up there as one of the best players in the Six Nations at the minute. And I think she is very, very close to being one of the top 5 in her position worldwide.
She's a competitor above
Yeah.
everything else. And again, I just get the vibes off her that she will not settle until Scotland have won a World Cup.
Yeah.
Which I know sounds ridiculous, but she's just that
doesn't
type
hurt.
of character.
Yeah. And for me, if Scotland are to kick on and perhaps beat a team like France, which I don't think is impossible, then, or even just Ireland and Wales, who are obviously the big rival teams, then she will be the player who makes the difference. She will be the player who steps up and goes, no, you're not getting past me.
I love that.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to end on before we finish this. A few weeks ago, I saw a TikTok that was posted by Bristol Bears, where they went around and asked everybody for their Six Nations predictions. And what the most interesting thing of all was Lana Skeldon said she thought it was going to be England would win the Six Nations. I think she might have said an England Grand Slam. And I don't know. I think that's a bit dodgy, mate.
I remember Ed Fairhurst, the former Canada scrum-half, in 2011 being asked who do you think is going to win the World Cup. And he said, if it isn't us, New Zealand.
That's how you answer
know what?
that
He was
question.
correct in that.
And look, I'm not saying that I necessarily think Lana Skeldon's correct that England might win the Six Nations.
Yeah.
But look, England won a wooden spoon party 2025. Let's go.
It's coming.